Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Master of the Air Episode 6 review. Bucky and Egan devise a plan to escape the concentration camp. The enemy territory revealed. The following video contains huge spoilers. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. A confused gap in the action feels like a misstep. But with a taut, frightening plot for Egan, it is time to take a breather. Last week, Masters of the Air concentrated on a massive battle that wiped out practically the entire bloody 100th. It makes sense then that Episode 6 may slack off the gas to allow the men and us time to digest and mourn, much as Episode 4 did after an equally terrible battle. However, Masters of the Air Episode 6 fumbles in execution, providing a confused break in the action that falls short of its full potential. Crows, Rosenthal, and Egan share the spotlight in this episode. With Rosenthal and CO, we travel to a quiet hideaway in the English countryside to give the team a much-needed break. Though the episode makes admirable attempts to address the Flyers' obvious post-traumatic stress disorder, which was previously known as combat fatigue, it ultimately feels pretty surface level for such a serious topic. The countryside. Rosenthal is determined to get back in the air. But he is clearly suffering from what happened in last week's episode and wishes to cope by returning to combat. In the end, all it takes for him to appear at peace about leaping back into his jet is a single talk with a doctor, which helps to instill in Rosenthal the value of leadership. His desire to stay in the air is mostly unquestioned. Elsewhere, some of the guys engage in a halting discourse about their adventures in the skies, and it is hinted that their candor and capacity to joke about it all help them come to grips with their circumstances. But it feels too light-handed to be truly successful, and it's especially strange when compared to Band of Brothers' visceral and poignant portrayal of PTSD. Over in Oxford, Crows is dealing with survivor's guilt, which appears to be resolved with a single, albeit painful, chat that helps him understand he is not to blame for Bubbles' death. It's all a missed opportunity to delve deeper into what the men are going through. And as a result, the majority of this episode feels like a misplaced, meandering diversion rather than an insightful break from the action, similar to Episode 4's very effective look at war on the ground and at home. It becomes even bizarre when compared to Egan's pulse-pounding experiences in Germany. Crow's tenure at Oxford was also marked by some unusual events. Crows has his pronunciation corrected, confronts a snooty officer who criticizes American behavior only to be humiliated by Crows reminding him that Americans can die at any time, and even throws in a lame joke about the American Revolution. When combined with the bitter, downright brutal RAF soldiers we encountered earlier in the season, it all begins to feel like patriotism gone wild. Towards the end of the episode, we hear a song about how every allied nation had to work together to overcome Nazism. Why isn't the series capturing the same spirit? However, there is one nice Oxford character in the form of Subaltern Westgate. Her time with Crows is another acknowledgement of women's many roles in the war, but it feels out of place. It's wonderful to see Crows get a respite, but if that's all the tale achieves, it feels pointless. This rural break is cut short as Egan is subjected to an intensive, terrible ordeal overseas. After being shot down and landing in Nazi Germany, Egan is promptly discovered by farmers. When Egan slips into a body of water and is followed through the reeds by armed farmers, the sound of a gunshot heralding his capture is horrific. What happens to Egan and the other abducted troops is barbaric. The awful violence of the majority of the POWs being executed in a wrecked town, followed by a seriously wounded Egan fleeing as his own grave is dug, is stomach-churning. Egan refuses to reveal any secrets to the Nazi officer, who questions him in a surprisingly unsettlingly pleasant manner, and is sent to a POW camp. It is incredibly terrifying for Egan and the other POWs to see a train hauling people, each of whom is wailing for aid. What remains unsaid here is quite effective. The Major's voyage through this episode is also filled with dramatic sights, such as fierce canines, a train approaching in the dark surrounded by the ghostly hiss of steam, and distorted, furious shouts from Nazi soldiers, all of which combine to create an evocative nightmare. When Egan finally arrives at the POW camp, there is some good news to temper the bleakness. Clevin has survived and reaches out to Egan. The two are reunited, but under dreadful circumstances, as seen by a slow, menacing pan up to the complete, expansive camp. By the end of the episode, it appears that the only meaningful change in the show's overall narrative is this reunion. Masters of the Air has been consistently terrific up to this point, so I'm convinced that this is only a minor hiccup in what would otherwise be a fantastic miniseries. That remains to be seen, with 3 episodes remaining, but for the time being, we're looking forward to returning to the skies next week and catching up with Clevin. Thank you for watching.